Why was a woman in blood-stained hospital scrubs standing in the middle of a biker bar, holding a Glock steady like she'd done it 1,000 times before? The laughter had died seconds ago. The jukebox still hummed faintly, a distorted echo of rock music caught between tracks. Every eye in the Red Wolf Motorcycle Club was fixed on her. Angela Martinez, 42 years old, mother, ER nurse, and right now the most dangerous person in the room. Her voice broke the silence, calm and razor-sharp. "I'm here for my son." The sound carried through the smoke and neon light like a blade through cloth. No hesitation, no tremor, just exhaustion wrapped in purpose. She didn't raise her weapon higher, didn't wave it around like some rookie drunk on adrenaline. She simply held it steady, her finger resting beside the trigger, not on it. Discipline. Training. The kind that never quite leaves you, even after years of pretending you're just a nurse, just a mother. At the end of the bar, a man rose. Viper Thompson, 6'3", silver hair, scar from ear to chin, the kind of man who never had to explain that he ran this place. He took his time standing, one hand resting on the bar top, the other sliding into the pocket of his leather vest. "Lady," he said, his voice lazy but sharp enough to draw blood, "I think you got the wrong address. Hospitals are about 10 miles that way." The laughter returned, forced but loud, rolling through the room like thunder. Glass bottles clinked. Boots scraped the floor. A man called Tank, all muscle and tattoos, slammed his beer down hard enough to make the wood jump. "Maybe someone should call an ambulance for this crazy lady," he sneered. Angela didn't move, didn't blink. She just looked around, cataloging every face, every angle. One exit behind her, two to the left. One window she could reach in under 3 seconds if needed. She noted the bulges beneath jackets, the glint of metal at belts. Weapons count, 12, maybe 14. Her breathing stayed slow, her pulse controlled. "Tommy Martinez," she said, each word deliberate. 19, missing for 72 hours, last seen leaving this club. Her tone was soft, but it struck like hammer blows, with blood on his hands and fear in his eyes. For the first time, the laughter faltered. A few exchanged glances. The name had hit something. But Viper didn't flinch. "Snake," he said, jerking his chin at a wiry man covered in prison ink. "Check the list." Snake pulled out a phone, scrolling lazily. "No Tommy here. No Martinez either. You sure you got the right place, sweetheart?" Angela's jaw tightened slightly. Her weapon shifted just a fraction, not threatening but ready. That tiny adjustment didn't go unnoticed. Doc Peterson, the club's medic, felt his stomach tighten. That stance, that posture, he'd seen it before in dusty combat zones half a world away. The way someone stood when the difference between living and dying was measured in inches. Angela's tone stayed steady. "His motorcycle is in your parking lot. Blue Kawasaki, plate 7XR942. Still warm when I checked it 20 minutes ago." Tank pushed off the bar, casting a shadow that swallowed her in height and muscle. "Lady, I don't care if you found the Hope Diamond out there. This is private property. You're trespassing with a weapon. Time to leave." But she didn't. She shifted her weight slightly, left heel angled, right shoulder dropped, defensive stance, measured, trained. Doc Peterson's grip tightened on his glass. He knew that stance. He'd trained medics who'd used it under fire. "Where is my son?" Angela asked again. And this time her voice wasn't loud. It was dangerous in its restraint. The kind of tone people used when they'd already imagined every possible outcome and accepted them all. Razor Pete, the sergeant-at-arms, leaned on his cue stick. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "this is a room full of men who don't take kindly to threats." "I'm not threatening anyone," she replied. "I'm asking a question." "Yeah," Viper smirked. "And who the hell do you think you are?" "Angela Martinez," she said. "My son is Tommy, and someone in this room knows exactly where he is." The way she said it, calm, grounded, absolute, changed the air. It wasn't just fearlessness. It was conviction. Viper studied her longer this time, the way she planted her feet, the slight tremor not of fear but fatigue, the steady eyes that looked through men like glass. He tried to smile again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Angela," he repeated slowly. "Pretty name. Tell me, Angela, what makes you think we'd know anything about your boy?" "Because Detective Louis Morales was investigating your club for federal racketeering," she said, her words slicing through the noise like a scalpel. "Because my son worked at the garage down the street and saw something he shouldn't have. And because 24 hours after Morales disappeared, Tommy stopped answering his phone." The silence that followed was suffocating. Snake's phone slipped from his fingers. Tank's grin evaporated. Doc Peterson's whiskey burned down his throat as he finally understood what kind of storm had just walked into their house. "That's a serious accusation," Viper said, voice tight now. "You might want to be careful throwing words like federal around in a place like this." Angela reached into her pocket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a crumpled paper. She held it up like evidence. "Tommy's work schedule, he never misses a shift. Last text I got from him said, 'Mom, need help,' then nothing. His GPS is dead, his bank account untouched. You tell me what that means." The air conditioning hummed, the only sound in the room. Bone Martinez, the road captain, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, maybe your boy just—" "Don't." Her voice cut him off like a blade. "Don't you dare tell me he's out partying. I know my son." Tank stepped forward again. "Listen, lady, I don't care who you are." He didn't finish. In one motion, Angela pivoted. Her stance changed. Left foot back, Glock steady, barrel angled just enough to demand respect. "I'm not leaving," she said flatly. "And before you try to take this weapon from me, know this. I've had 4 hours of sleep in 2 days, lost 13 pounds worrying about my son, and I have absolutely nothing left to lose." The words hung there, raw and unfiltered. Tank's hand twitched, Snake's muscles coiled, Doc Peterson's heart hammered. Then Snake lunged. The motion was fast, but Angela was faster. She sidestepped, twisting her body with the precision of a fighter who'd practiced disarming drills more times than she could count. In a blur, Snake was off balance, his wrist pinned, his momentum redirected. He stumbled back, cursing and clutching his arm. The room froze. "Don't test me," she said quietly. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. Tank moved next, circling, trying to flank her. But she tracked him, head turning with deliberate calm. Doc Peterson had seen trained killers less composed than this woman. "Easy," he thought, "easy." "Everyone just relax," he said aloud, stepping forward with his palms up. "Let's all take a step back." But Tank wasn't listening. "Nah, Doc, this crazy witch walked into our house and—" He never finished. Angela's movement was pure efficiency. No wasted motion. A twist, a grip, a torque, and Tank stumbled back, pain written across his face as his wrist bent the wrong way. The younger bikers stared, wide-eyed. "Holy hell," one whispered. "Did you see that?" Doc Peterson did, and in that instant he knew she wasn't just some mother. She was trained, hardened, maybe not military now, but definitely once. The tension broke when the bartender, Maria Santos, emerged from the back. "What in God's name? I'm calling the police." "No police," Viper barked. Angela laughed, bitter, hollow. "Please, call them. I'm sure they'd love to search this place, especially with an active federal investigation." That did it. The unease spread like smoke. Glances, murmurs, fear. Tank looked at Viper, then at the woman who refused to back down. Maria froze halfway to the phone, eyes narrowing. "Ma'am, are you hurt? That blood on you, it's fresh." Angela looked down, as if just noticing. "Occupational hazard. I'm an emergency trauma nurse." But Doc saw more than words. He saw the way she ignored pain, the way her hands trembled only when she wasn't aiming. Some of that blood was hers, no question. "What kind of work you do?" he asked quietly. Whatever needs doing, she said. Trauma surgery, crisis medicine, 23 years of keeping people alive when no one else could. 23 years. That hit Doc hard. He'd been military long enough to know the math. Those years lined up with the hardest combat rotations overseas. Something about her tone, cold, resigned, stirred old memories. Before he could ask more, a young biker nicknamed Tiny sliced his hand open on a broken bottle. Blood spilled fast. Instinct took over. Angela moved before anyone else. Gun to her side, her free hand pressing on the wound. Pressure. Above heart level, she ordered, voice sharp, commanding. Tiny froze as she assessed the injury. Not deep. You'll live. Get me a clean towel. The whole room watched. Not a mother now, not a threat, but a professional in her element. Doc exhaled softly. Combat medicine. No hesitation, no fear, just focus. He knew, he finally knew. Where did you serve? He asked. Angela's head snapped toward him, eyes narrowed. Excuse me. You heard me, Doc said evenly. That's not civilian training, that's field medicine. So where did you serve? The question hit like a gunshot. The silence afterward was thick enough to choke on. Tank chuckled darkly. Doc, a Vietnam vet. He knows the real ones when he sees M. Question is, what's a military medic doing working nights in a hospital? Angela's reply was sharp, almost brittle. Same as any veteran, I guess. Trying to find a world where no one's shooting at me. But it was too late. The seed had been planted. They all saw it now, the poise, the skill, the quiet confidence of someone who'd seen real chaos and walked out of it alive. Viper leaned against the bar, studying her. You know, he said softly, I think there's a lot more to this story than a missing boy. Angela didn't blink. There always is, she replied, but my son's the only part that matters. And then Razor Pete, still by the window, stiffened. Viper, he muttered. We got company. Black van, tinted windows, parked across the street, looks federal. The atmosphere detonated. Chairs scraped. Guns appeared from hidden places. In an instant, the club turned from bar to bunker. Angela didn't move. She stood in the center of the storm, weapon low but ready, watching the chaos with calm detachment, the kind that comes from surviving worse. Everyone stay put, Viper barked. Tank, check the back door. Snake was already on his phone. All units, possible raid, move to. All stations, stand down, Angela commanded. The authority in her voice made the room stop. The kind of command that came from a place of muscle memory and chain of command. Snake froze mid-dial, staring at her. Who the hell do you think you are? Tank demanded. Angela reached into her scrubs, pulling out a worn ID case. She didn't open it. She just held it where they could all see the edge of a government insignia. Doc Peterson's heart stuttered. Recognition flared behind his eyes. And for the first time, the bikers realized something they couldn't quite say out loud. The woman standing in front of them, the one who had walked in from the night in blood-stained scrubs, holding a gun steady in her exhausted hands, wasn't just a mother looking for her son. She was something far more dangerous. And the night had only just begun. Why didn't she look afraid? That question hung in the smoky air long after her command, all stations, stand down, silenced every biker in the room. It wasn't just her tone, it was the way she said it, crisp, controlled, like she'd been trained to lead men twice her size and make them obey without question. And for the first time, Viper Thompson, the man who ruled this club like a god among wolves, found himself hesitating. Snake's hand froze halfway to his radio. Tank's shotgun wavered slightly. Even the music seemed to hold its breath. Angela Martinez didn't blink. She didn't need to. Outside, headlights flared. Boots hit gravel. The distant thud of car doors echoed across the parking lot. Then silence again. The kind that comes right before the storm. Federal, Razor Pete whispered from the window. No plates, tactical formation. Viper's jaw clenched. "You brought them here," he growled. "You led them right to my door." Angela's voice was calm. "They were coming either way. I just made sure I was standing between them and my son." It wasn't a boast. It was the sound of truth, and it burned through every layer of his anger. The club president took a step closer, studying her like a puzzle he couldn't solve. "You don't call the feds on a club like mine unless you know exactly what you're doing," he said. "So tell me, Angela, who are you really?" She didn't answer, not yet. The tension was electric. 18 men, all armed, staring down one exhausted woman in scrubs, and yet somehow she looked like the only one in control. Her stance was steady, back toward the wall, eyes scanning the room in methodical intervals. Tank noticed it. Snake noticed it. And Doc Peterson, he remembered it. He'd seen soldiers like her before. The ones who carried ghosts in their eyes and still walked into chaos like it was just another day at work. From outside came a new sound, the click and clatter of rifles being readied. Snake swore under his breath. "They're flanking both sides." Viper turned to his men. "Lock it down, nobody leaves, nobody panics." Then, almost reluctantly, he looked back at Angela. "If this is a setup, lady, you just signed your own death warrant." Angela exhaled slowly. "You think I care about that?" Her tone wasn't reckless. It was hollow, tired. That kind of voice comes from someone who's already buried too much to be afraid of her own ending. Tank shifted his weight. "She's bluffing." "Am I?" she asked quietly. And then she did something none of them expected. She holstered her weapon, slow enough that every biker saw the move, deliberate enough to prove she wasn't afraid of them. Then she looked right at Viper. "You want to know who I am," she said softly. "You'll find out soon enough." The back door slammed open. Maria Santos burst in from the rear hall, breathless. "They're surrounding the building. I saw laser sights through the windows." Viper turned on Angela, fury mixing with confusion. "What did you do?" "What I had to," she said. "I called them." The words landed like a grenade. The club exploded in motion. Guns drawn, chairs knocked over, shouting. "You called the feds," Tank roared. "You set us up." Angela didn't move. "I gave you a chance," she said quietly. "All I wanted was my son. You could have told me the truth." Viper's face hardened. "You're insane." "Maybe," she said, "but I'm not wrong." The front door burst open before he could reply. Floodlights spilled through the smoke as tactical boots pounded the floor. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," a woman's voice shouted. "Weapons down, hands where we can see them." The woman leading the entry team was small, maybe 5'4", but carried herself like gravity itself had chosen her as its anchor. "Agent Sarah Kim," she announced, scanning the room through sharp, calm eyes. "We have a warrant for Vincent Thompson, a.k.a. Viper, and members of the Red Wolf Motorcycle Club. Nobody move." For a few long seconds, nobody did. Angela stood exactly where she had been, hands visible, eyes steady. Her heart was pounding, but her breathing was measured, controlled, the discipline of someone who'd been under fire before. Tank raised his shotgun a fraction higher. "Like hell," he muttered. "They're not taking me." Angela stepped forward. "Tank," she said softly, "don't." He turned toward her, muscles tense, rage boiling over. "Don't what? You got any idea what happens to us in federal custody? We don't do something you can't take back." Her voice cracked, not from fear but emotion. It stopped him just for a heartbeat, long enough for Agent Kim's tactical team to fan out, securing exits, shouting commands. The room filled with the metallic staccato of safeties clicking off, the shuffle of boots on concrete. "Stand down," Agent Kim barked again. And then softer, "Now." Tank hesitated. His knuckles whitened around the shotgun, but the sight of red laser dots dancing across his chest finally made him lower it, slowly, reluctantly. Viper stood motionless, fury carved into every line of his face. "You better explain this," he said to Angela, his voice shaking now not from fear but betrayal. Angela met his stare. "I already did, you just didn't want to listen." Agent Kim moved closer, weapon low but ready. Her eyes swept the scene, the bikers, the overturned tables, the blood on Angela's scrubs. "Mrs. Martinez," she said, "you did well." The bikers stared at her. "Mrs. Martinez," Tank echoed. "Wait, you two know each other." Angela's shoulders sagged slightly, as if the weight she'd been carrying finally had somewhere to land. "I told you," she said. "I called them." Agent Kim turned to her men. "Secure all weapons, detain all suspects." Viper's voice broke through the noise. "Suspects for what?" "Federal racketeering, drug trafficking, and murder in the first degree," Kim said matter-of-factly. "Murder?" Viper's expression flickered. "What murder?" Kim's tone was steady. "Detective Louis Morales, found this morning, tortured, executed, single gunshot to the head." The color drained from several faces. Angela felt the words slice through the air. It wasn't shock that hit her, it was confirmation. The missing pieces finally fitting together. Tank turned toward her. "You knew," he hissed. "You knew all along." "I knew Morales was investigating this club," Angela said. "I knew my son saw something he shouldn't have. And I knew that if I waited for someone else to act, I'd never see Tommy again." "Your son's safe," Agent Kim said quietly. Angela blinked as if she hadn't heard right. "What?" "Federal protection," Kim continued. "Picked up 48 hours ago. He's been in a safe house ever since." The Glock slipped slightly in Angela's grip, her hand trembling for the first time since she walked in. "Say that again." "Your son's alive," Kim said, "and very worried about you." The relief hit her like a physical blow. Her knees wavered. For 72 hours, she'd lived between dread and desperation. 3 days of searching, begging, hopping. And now, just like that, the storm inside her broke. Her weapon lowered slowly until it hung by her side. She closed her eyes, breathing out a sound that was half a sob, half a prayer. "He's alive," she whispered. "My boy's alive." Viper was still processing, his mind spinning between anger and disbelief. "You expect me to believe this is all about one missing kid?" Agent Kim turned toward him, expression unreadable. "This isn't about one kid. It's about everything your club's been doing for the past 3 years." Doc Peterson spoke softly, breaking the thick silence. "Ma'am," he said to the agent, "with all due respect, I think there's a lot we don't understand here." Agent Kim gave him a measured look. "Then you should start listening." She gestured to her team. "Bring the evidence in." 2 agents stepped forward, carrying a tablet and a thick file. They placed them on the bar. On the screen, surveillance footage. Viper's face appeared first, grainy but unmistakable, sitting across from Detective Morales at a diner. Heated words. The video jumped. Another angle, both men outside near motorcycles arguing. Then darkness. "Morales was undercover," Kim said. "He'd been investigating your club for 8 months." "You're lying," Snake snapped. "Am I?" Kim tapped the screen again. New footage. Viper, Tank, Snake, all caught on camera in multiple meetings with known cartel associates. The silence in the room grew heavier by the second. Angela leaned against the wall, the exhaustion washing over her in waves. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving only the ache. Her son was alive. Her weapon was down. And the truth, the ugly, necessary truth, was finally out. Agent Kim turned back to her. "You didn't have to come here alone, you know. You could have waited for us." Angela's eyes glistened. "I couldn't wait, not another hour." Kim nodded slowly. "Then it's a miracle you're still alive." Doc Peterson stepped forward, his expression soft with understanding. "No, ma'am," he said. "It's not a miracle, it's training." Angela met his eyes. For a brief second, something unspoken passed between them, a shared recognition between soldiers who'd both seen too much. Kim noticed the look. "Training?" she asked, curiosity flickering. "You military, Mrs. Martinez?" Angela hesitated. The question echoed through the quiet like a test. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Doc answered for her, voice steady. "Field medic," he said. "I've seen the way she moves. That's not civilian." Kim's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is that true?" Angela looked at her, then at the bikers watching her, and for the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Before she could respond, the world outside erupted. Gunfire cracked the air, shouts, tires squealed, someone was trying to run. Movement at the rear. An agent yelled into his radio. Kim spun. "Copy that, all units perimeter hold, nobody leaves." Angela's head turned toward the sound. Instinct took over. Every cell in her body switched back to muscle memory, threat analysis, exit vectors, crossfire lines. "Rear exit?" she asked sharply. Kim nodded, distracted by her radio. "Bikers trying to flee." Angela's tone changed, clipped, professional. "You'll have a blind spot between the fuel tanks and the alley. 2, maybe 3 motorcycles could fit through." Kim blinked. "How do you know that?" Angela's lips pressed into a thin line. "Because I've studied enough kill zones to recognize one." For the first time that night, Agent Sarah Kim looked at her not as a civilian, but as an equal. The tactical radio crackled again. "Suspects down, scene secure." The noise faded, replaced by the low hum of tension dissolving. The chaos had burned itself out, at least for now. Agent Kim holstered her weapon. "Mrs. Martinez," she said softly, "you saved lives tonight." Angela's expression didn't change. "Then why doesn't it feel like it?" The question hung in the smoky air, unanswerable. Because saving lives didn't erase the ones she'd already lost. Not overseas, not at home, and not in the long, sleepless nights when every sound still felt like an ambush. Doc Peterson's voice broke the silence. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly were you before all this?" Angela looked down at the Glock, still warm in her hand. And for a fleeting second, she almost told him. But then she remembered something her commanding officer had once said, in another life, halfway around the world. "The moment you start explaining yourself, you've already lost your edge." So instead, she just said quietly, "Someone who's done this before." And as the federal agents began cuffing the bikers, and the night stretched into an uncertain calm, Angela stood alone near the wall, a mother, a veteran, a ghost of her former self, wondering how much of her old life she just let slip back into the light. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, her heart did the same, softer, quieter, but every bit as real. Why did Doc Peterson salute her? That question hit everyone in the room at once, the bikers, the agents, even Angela herself, though no one said it aloud. The moment his hand rose, shaking slightly but perfectly aligned, something changed. Respect, recognition, fear, all tangled together. It started with a sound, the faint rip of fabric. Angela's torn scrubs snagged against her vest as she moved, and suddenly, what had been half concealed beneath her hospital uniform came into view. Not armor plates or tactical gear. Something older, more personal. A tattoo. An eagle, wings spread wide, talons clutching a rifle. The details so precise, so deliberate, that even the hard men in the room felt their breath catch. Each feather carried initials, dozens of them, the kind soldiers sometimes inked into their skin to keep fallen comrades close. Below it, a phrase etched in bold, military lettering, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. And under that, in smaller words that carried a chill of legend, "Death waits in the dark." Doc's voice cracked when he spoke. "Ma'am, Night Stalkers." Angela froze. The sound of that name, that ghost of her past, hit her harder than any gunfire. It wasn't just a unit. It was a lifetime. The biker stared. Viper's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. "You're kidding," he muttered. "That's special ops, black ops." Tank's eyes widened. "She's lying, has to be." But Doc's trembling salute didn't waver. "No, she's not." The silence thickened. Even Agent Kim, the calm, composed face of federal authority, stepped closer now, eyes narrowing as she bent to pick up something metallic that had fallen from Angela's pocket. A service card. The kind you only get after surviving things no one writes about. She flipped it open, her lips moving silently as she read. Specialist Angela Martinez, Flight Medic, 160th SOAR. Then her eyes met Angela's. "The Night Stalkers," she whispered. "Jesus Christ." Angela looked away. "Former Night Stalker," she corrected softly. "I've been out 5 years." Doc shook his head slowly. "Ma'am, there's no such thing as former. Once you've served with the 160th, it never leaves you." Agent Kim's tone shifted, no longer authority, now quiet awe. "According to this, you served 6 tours in Afghanistan, 3 in Iraq. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Air Medal with Combat Device, Combat Medical Badge." The list rolled out like a confession Angela hadn't meant to make. Tiny, the youngest biker, spoke up in a shaky voice. "What's a Combat Medical Badge?" Doc answered before Angela could. "It means she saved lives under fire. It means she went into hell with nothing but a med kit and courage." Tiny swallowed hard, staring at her like she was something out of myth. "You mean she's like Special Forces?" Angela's expression didn't change. "No," she said quietly, "just someone who showed up when it mattered." But her eyes betrayed her. Beneath the calm there was sorrow, the kind that never leaves. Tank stepped forward, voice low but trembling with something between fear and fascination. "How the hell does a special operations medic end up working nights in a hospital ER?" Angela didn't answer immediately. She looked around at the flashing blue lights bleeding through the grimy windows, at the agents bagging evidence, at the blood drying on her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost reflective. "Same way anyone leaves the military. One day, you're saving lives in Kandahar. The next, you're filling out insurance forms in Kansas City." Her tone was too steady, too practiced, like she'd told that lie to herself 1,000 times before. Agent Kim crossed her arms. "That's not the whole story, is it?" Angela exhaled. "No," she admitted, "it never is." Doc's eyes softened. "What happened, ma'am?" Angela's hands trembled now barely, but enough. "My last mission," she began, her gaze distant. "We were pulling a wounded SEAL team out of Helmand Province. They'd been ambushed. Badly. Time was running out. I told command we could make the pickup. They told us it was too hot. We went anyway." The room was silent. Even the agents paused their work. "RPG hit us 50 feet off the ground. Pilot died instantly. Co-pilot's spine snapped. 6 wounded SEALs in the back, 2 dead crew, and we were going down fast." Her voice faltered for the first time, but she forced it steady again. "I did what I was trained to do, kept everyone alive until rescue came. 3 hours in open desert surrounded by hostiles. No air support, no backup." Tank's jaw clenched. "You're telling me you fought off the Taliban with a med kit?" She shook her head. "I didn't fight, I treated. That's what medics do. We save people, even when it feels impossible." Agent Kim's expression softened. "And you got a medal for that?" Angela nodded once. "Yeah, a medal, 2 funerals, 6 months of debriefs, and an invitation to sign a classification agreement that would bury the truth." Doc frowned. "They wanted to cover it up." "They always do," she said quietly. "Intel failure, wrong coordinates. We were sent to the wrong compound. No one wanted that on record. So they offered me a choice: sign the papers or face court-martial for insubordination." "And you signed," Tank guessed. Angela looked him dead in the eye. No, I walked away. Her words hung there like smoke, curling through the silence. I took my honorable discharge and started over. Found a place where I could still help people. But it never really leaves you, the noise, the faces, the smell of blood and sand. Doc nodded slowly. It never does. For the first time, the bikers looked at her not as an intruder or threat, but as something they didn't have a word for. A woman forged by battle, scarred by loss, still carrying a mission no one else could see. The tension seemed to ease, until Agent Kim's radio crackled again. Control to team leader. We have confirmation Detective Morales is alive. Every head in the room turned toward her. What? Viper barked. You said he was dead. Agent Kim raised a hand for silence. We said a body was found. We didn't say it was Morales. Angela felt her stomach tighten. What are you saying? Kim's voice was steady, but her eyes flickered. This was an operation, a cover. Morales' death was faked to draw out the people leaking federal intelligence. Tank's face twisted. So nobody's dead. Oh, someone's dead, Kim replied grimly. Miguel Santos, cartel informant. He'd been selling federal data to your club. The cartel found out, made an example. The implications hit Viper like a punch. You set us up, he growled. No, Kim corrected. We exposed you. Every meeting, every transfer, every conversation recorded. Snake slammed his fist on the bar. You used us. Kim didn't deny it. We used the truth. The bikers shouted. The agents braced. But Angela stood still, absorbing the chaos with the quiet understanding of someone who'd seen far worse betrayals. Morales is alive, she said slowly. And Tommy, my son, saw something that tied into this. Kim nodded. He witnessed the exchange between Morales and the informant. He called 911. That's how we found him and you. Angela's eyes softened. He's the reason this all came down. Kim gave a small nod. Yes, and he's safe because of you. Angela's throat tightened. For the first time in 72 hours, her body began to relax and then tensed again just as quickly, because something still didn't fit. If Morales is alive, she asked slowly, why go through all this? Why fake his death? Why the raid? Why bring me here? Kim hesitated. It was brief, but Angela saw it. Because we needed you too, the agent said finally. Your son wasn't the only target. We needed someone to draw them out. Angela's jaw clenched. You used me. You volunteered, Kim countered. You called me. I called for help, Angela snapped, not to be used as bait. Her voice cracked with emotion, part fury, part heartbreak. Doc looked between them, realization dawning. You set her up. Kim's composure faltered for a second. We needed a distraction, she admitted. You walked in armed. They followed your lead. It gave us an opening. Angela closed her eyes. A tremor ran through her hand, not fear, but rage barely contained. You sent me into a room full of armed men, she said, voice trembling. And you didn't tell me you were already watching. Kim's silence said everything. Tank let out a low whistle. Guess we all got played tonight. Angela didn't respond. She was too busy keeping her hands from shaking, too busy swallowing the lump in her throat. She'd spent years learning to keep calm under pressure, but betrayal still cut deeper than bullets. Doc stepped closer, speaking softly so only she could hear. Ma'am, they used you, but don't let that change what you did here. You stood your ground, you saved lives. Angela stared at him. You think that makes it worth it? He sighed. No, but it makes it matter. Outside, more sirens wailed. Agents moved like shadows, corralling bikers, cataloging evidence. The club that once throbbed with noise and defiance now felt like a tomb. Angela stood among them, the ghosts of two worlds colliding in her chest, the medic who had saved lives in war, and the mother who had risked hers for her son. Agent Kim finally spoke again, voice quieter now. Mrs. Martinez, she said, When this is over, we need to talk about your service record. Angela looked up sharply. What about it? Kim held up her tablet, the screen glowing cold blue. Because according to our database, she said, you never served. The words landed like a gunshot. Even the agent stopped moving. Angela's face went pale. What? No military record, Kim repeated. No deployment history. No medical service credentials beyond civilian. Nothing. That's impossible, Doc protested. I saw her service card. I saw the insignia. Kim's eyes narrowed. Then maybe we both need to know what she's not telling us. Angela's gaze shifted between them. The agent, the medic, the stunned bikers. Her pulse hammered. Her breath came short. There were things she'd buried, things even the army had scrubbed clean. And now, under the cold light of law and truth, her past was clawing its way back to the surface. She looked at Kim, voice steady but trembling around the edges. You want to know who I am? Yes, Kim said quietly, I do. Angela's eyes flicked to the tattoo on her shoulder, the eagle with its hollow stare. Then she said almost to herself, so do I. The night outside was alive with flashing lights, radios, and the sound of justice closing in. But inside, under the harsh neon of a broken bar, one woman's truth and the ghosts she tried to bury were finally beginning to rise. Why did the government erase her? The question hung in the stale air like smoke, heavier than the gunpowder and spilled whiskey that still clung to the room. Angela Martinez stood motionless, the harsh light of a federal flashlight slicing across her face, making her look both exposed and unreachable at once. Agent Sarah Kim lowered the tablet in her hand, the glow fading as the words settled between them. No record, no enlistment, no deployment, nothing. Doc Peterson stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. That's not possible, he murmured. I saw her service card. That insignia doesn't lie. Kim's tone was calm, but it carried an undertone of unease. Maybe it's not that she never served. Maybe someone doesn't want it to look like she did. Angela's heart thudded once, heavy as a drum beat. She could feel the pulse in her throat. She'd lived long enough around secrets to recognize when she'd stepped on one. She didn't answer. She couldn't, not yet. Because there were things she'd promised never to speak of again, names, coordinates, missions that had been scrubbed clean by people far above her pay grade. Things she'd buried to protect lives that would never see daylight. But Agent Kim didn't blink. Mrs. Martinez, she said, more measured now, who were you working for? Angela's lips parted, but no sound came. She was back there again, the burning horizon of Helmand Province, the sound of rotor blades straining against desert wind, the weight of a bleeding soldier in her arms, the scent of cordite and blood and something darker, betrayal. I was told to forget, she said quietly. Kim's brow furrowed. By who? Angela's voice was soft, detached. By the same people who gave me this tattoo. Doc Peterson stepped forward, his voice low, steady. Classified operations, he said to Kim. I've seen this before. Units that don't officially exist. Missions buried so deep the Pentagon couldn't find them if it tried. Tank, still nursing his wrist, gave a dry laugh. So what are you saying, Doc? She's some kind of ghost soldier. Doc didn't answer. He just looked at Angela. No, she's something rarer, a ghost they decided to forget existed. Angela finally turned toward Kim, her eyes haunted but steady. You want the truth. You won't find it in a database. Kim studied her. Then tell me. Angela hesitated, then exhaled slowly, as if bracing herself for something she'd sworn she'd never revisit. I worked medevac for the 160th, but not the kind you read about in reports. Ours weren't clean extractions. We didn't just pick up wounded soldiers, we went where no one else would go, deep operations, rescue missions that didn't have names. Black Ops, Kim pressed. Angela nodded once. Unofficial, unrecorded, We were ghosts before we even knew it. Tank frowned, still skeptical but listening despite himself. Why hide it? Because sometimes, Angela said, saving the wrong person is bad for politics. The words hit Doc hard. He looked down, swallowing hard. He knew that truth too well, the kind of orders that made you question the word honor. Angela's gaze drifted to a distant point, somewhere beyond the club, beyond the years. There was one mission, she said quietly, the one that ended everything. Kim's attention sharpened. What happened? Angela didn't look at her. Her eyes were glassy, reflecting the flashing red and blue from outside. We were ordered to retrieve an asset, not a soldier, a civilian. Intelligence said he had information that could stop a series of bombings. High value, top priority. She paused, her throat tightening. When we landed, it wasn't one man waiting. It was a family, a father, a mother, 2 kids. They'd been hiding in a basement for days. Doc's expression hardened. He already knew where this was going. They told you to leave them, he said. Angela nodded. We had orders to take only the target, but he wouldn't leave without them. He begged us. The pilot wanted to lift off, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave them. Her voice faltered. So we took them, all of them. And, Kim asked softly. The intel was bad, Angela said. The man wasn't a source, he was bait. We flew straight into an ambush. Her eyes unfocused for a moment, her voice trembling. We lost 2 aircraft that night, 12 souls. I pulled bodies out of burning metal with my bare hands. The kids didn't make it. Neither did my co-pilot. And when it was over, Command classified the mission so deep they buried us with it. The room was silent, the kind of silence that demanded respect. Even the bikers who'd mocked her hours ago couldn't look her in the eye. Angela's next words came out hollow. They erased us, every name, every file, every record, because it was easier to pretend we never existed than to admit the truth, that we were ordered into a trap to protect a lie. Kim stood there staring at her, and you never spoke about it. Angela met her gaze. Who would believe me? Doc swallowed hard, emotion cracking his weathered voice. Ma'am, that's why you left. Angela nodded slowly. I thought if I stayed, I'd drown in silence, so I traded one kind of chaos for another. The ER, different kind of battlefield, still saving lives, still losing sleep, just fewer bullets. Her words carried the weight of someone who had learned that healing and surviving weren't the same thing. Agent Kim's voice softened. Why come back into this world tonight? Angela's answer came without hesitation. Because this time, the person who needed saving was my son. Her voice trembled. And because no one, no command, no bureaucracy, no government was going to bury him too. Tank leaned back, shaking his head in disbelief. You're telling me you went through all that, and they just erased you like you were nothing. Angela's eyes glistened, like I was never there. Doc's fists clenched. Damn shame. Soldiers like you are the backbone of this country, and the ones it forgets first. Kim was silent for a long moment. Then she said quietly, there's something else, isn't there? Angela's gaze flicked toward her, sharp. What do you mean? The erasure, Kim said. It wasn't just about covering up a failed mission, was it? Someone made sure you couldn't be found, someone who needed you gone. Angela didn't answer, but her silence said everything. Kim stepped closer, lowering her voice. Was it your commanding officer? Angela's jaw tightened. He wasn't my commanding officer, not really. He was something else. Agency, Kim pressed. Angela shook her head. Private, contracted through the military, a ghost company. They moved money, not missions. Kim's expression darkened. You mean private contractors, paramilitary? Angela nodded. And when the ambush went bad, they blamed it on us, made it disappear, but someone had to pay the price. Someone like you, Doc said softly. Angela's eyes met his. Someone expendable. The words hung like lead. For a long time, no one spoke. Then from outside, a new noise cut through the silence, the steady rhythm of helicopter blades slicing the night sky. Agent Kim's radio crackled. Control to team leader, extraction inbound. Kim looked toward the windows. That's not ours, she said. The color drained from Angela's face. She knew that sound too well. The pitch, the rhythm, it wasn't military standard. It was darker, quieter, built for stealth. That's them, she whispered. Who? Kim demanded. The people who erased me. The bikers looked at each other nervously. Tank reached instinctively for his weapon, then realized it was already confiscated. Outside, the helicopter's hum deepened, circling. Then silence. No landing, no retreat. Just the low, deliberate hover of a hunter waiting for its prey to move. Agent Kim's tactical instincts flared. Positions, everyone inside. Angela's hand gripped the bar for balance. You don't understand. They're not here for you. Kim's eyes widened. They're here for you. Angela nodded once. They can't afford me talking. The agents moved into formation, weapons raised. Red dots danced across the windows. Viper, still in cuffs, laughed bitterly. Looks like your ghost friends came home, sweetheart. But Angela wasn't looking at him. She was staring toward the door, eyes distant, haunted, calculating. The ghosts of her past had come calling. And this time, they weren't just after her story. They were here to make sure no one heard it again. Agent Kim turned toward her, voice tight. What are we dealing with? Angela's tone was grim. The kind of people who don't exist until they've finished the job. Kim nodded to her team, signaling for perimeter lockdown. But Angela shook her head. No, you don't lock down against them, you survive them. Doc Peterson stepped closer, whispering, Ma'am, are we in danger? Angela's gaze stayed fixed on the window. All of us. Outside, the night went still again, too still. And somewhere beyond the flashing lights and police barricades, the unseen figures of men without insignia began to move through the shadows. Angela's mind was already racing, calculating angles, exits, fallback routes. The instincts she'd buried were alive again, sharp as ever. You said you wanted the truth, she said quietly to Kim. Well, Agent, it's about to walk through that door. And as the power flickered and the lights dimmed, the last fragments of her erased past came storming back into the present. Why did they cut the power first? Angela knew the answer before anyone else did. That's what you did when you hunted ghosts. You took away the light, the sound, the sense of control. You left only instinct. And that was what they were counting on. The club went dark in an instant. Flashlights clicked. Red lasers swept across the walls. The faint mechanical hum of night vision goggles, that low, almost inaudible whine, told her everything she needed to know. There inside the perimeter, Angela whispered. Agent Kim pivoted toward the sound of her voice. How many? 3, maybe 4. Her tone was steady. They'll move fast. They'll take out your comms and your lights. They're not here to negotiate. Kim keyed her radio. All units. Static, nothing. The line was dead. Angela's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the old rhythm, the one her body had memorized years ago. The way the world narrowed to seconds and shadows. The way breath slowed and time stretched. Tank cursed quietly in the dark. This is bad. Angela crouched near the bar, eyes closed, mapping the room in her mind. One exit at the back, one to the left, windows barricaded, flashbangs likely next. Doc Peterson's hand trembled as he reached for her shoulder. Ma'am, how do we stop them? Angela opened her eyes. We don't, we outthink them. Viper barked a bitter laugh from his cuffs. You sound like you've done this before. She didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed a broken piece of mirror from the floor and angled it toward the front door, catching the faint reflection of movement outside. 3 figures, tactical posture, suppressors. Her whisper was precise. Alpha team formation, staggered entry, standard sweep pattern. Kim frowned. You can tell that from here. Angela's tone was sharp. I used to run with them. The realization landed hard. Kim's jaw clenched. You're saying? I'm saying I trained half the people coming through that door. Before anyone could reply, the first flashbang hit. A blinding white explosion of light and sound. Even Angela flinched, hand instinctively covering her ears as the world dissolved into ringing chaos. When the smoke cleared, three shapes filled the doorway head to toe in matte black, visors gleaming faint green in the dark. No insignia, no names, just silence. Federal agents, Kim shouted, stand down. No reply. The first operator moved with surgical precision, sweeping the room, weapon tight against his shoulder. The second went low, securing the flank. The third lingered just long enough for Angela to see the patch on his glove. A small silver wolf. Her breath caught. No, she whispered. That insignia wasn't military. It wasn't federal. It belonged to Cerberus, the private unit contracted through military intelligence, the same ghost company that had buried her years ago. And the man leading them now. She knew his gait, his shoulders, the way he pivoted between steps. Graves, she breathed. Agent Kim glanced at her. Who? Angela's voice hardened. My old commander. The name hit her chest like a bullet. Colonel Ethan Graves. The man who'd recruited her into the shadows, trained her, praised her, and then signed the report that erased her from existence. Kim raised her weapon. Identify yourselves. Graves' voice came through the dark, calm as ice. We're not here for you, Agent Kim. We're here for her. Angela stepped out from behind the bar, the glow of a single emergency light catching her face. You should have stayed, buried Graves. He tilted his head slightly, almost amused. I could say the same, Martinez. Tank stared between them. Wait, you know this guy. Angela didn't take her eyes off Graves. He's the reason I don't exist. The air between them was electric, history wrapped in betrayal. Graves smiled faintly. You always had a flair for drama. I told them you'd never stay quiet. Kim's weapon didn't lower. You're trespassing on a federal scene. Graves ignored her. His gaze stayed locked on Angela. You broke protocol. You made contact with federal law enforcement. You put classified information at risk. Angela's laugh was dry, bitter. You mean I told the truth? Graves took a slow step forward. You think you're the hero in this story. I'm not the one hunting unarmed civilians in the dark, she said. That flicker of defiance, that spark he used to admire was still there, and that's what made her dangerous. Stand down, Martinez, Graves ordered. Come with us quietly. You'll be debriefed and relocated. Angela shook her head. No more lies. Then you're making this harder than it needs to be. You already made it hard the day you left us to die. His jaw tightened, the faintest crack in his perfect control. That mission was compromised. We had orders. You had a choice, she cut in, and you chose to erase us. Behind her, Agent Kim's voice was low but urgent. Angela, talk to me. What are we dealing with here? Angela didn't look back. Men who don't fail, they rewrite the story. And then before Kim could respond, Graves lifted two fingers. The silent signal, move in. Angela grabbed Kim and yanked her down behind the bar, just as another flashbang burst through the window. Chaos erupted, agents shouting, bikers diving for cover, the world spinning in flashes of white and gray. Tank lunged for the nearest agent's dropped sidearm. Doc pulled Maria behind an overturned table. Angela moved by instinct, counting seconds between detonations, timing her breath, waiting for the right window. 3 seconds, move. She slid across the floor, grabbing the fallen flashlight, snapping it off, using the beam's memory to track motion. She wasn't fighting, not yet. She was thinking, surviving. Graves' team swept in fast, suppressors whispering through the dark, bullets biting into wood and glass. Angela ducked low, returned fire once not to kill but to redirect. A spark, a distraction. Enough for Kim's agents to reposition, enough for the bikers to scramble toward cover. But Graves wasn't here to kill them all. He was here to retrieve her. That's what scared her most. "Martinez," his voice cut through the smoke, "you don't understand what you're doing." She shouted back, "I understand exactly what I'm doing." Her voice echoed through the wreckage, defiant, furious, alive. And for a second, even the bullets seemed to pause. Graves sighed through his comms, "You always were stubborn." Angela crouched near the back hallway, signaling Kim with a hand motion, 2 left, 1 rear exit. Kim nodded, understanding instantly. Extraction route. Angela whispered, "Kitchen, then service door. Once we hit the alley, head north." Kim's eyes narrowed. "And you?" Angela didn't answer, because she already knew she wasn't leaving yet. As Kim's agents began moving civilians out, Angela rose, using the chaos as cover. She slipped behind a pillar, circled wide, and caught sight of Graves through the smoke. He was older now, streaks of gray in his hair, lines carved deep into his face, but his eyes were the same, cold, focused, unforgiving. She raised her weapon. "Why me?" she called out. He turned, almost amused. "Because you're the last one left." The words hit harder than the gunfire. Last one, meaning the others, her crew, her medevac team, they'd all been found, silenced. Angela's breath caught. "You killed them." Graves' tone didn't change. "I neutralized a threat. They were your soldiers. They were liabilities." Angela's finger tightened on the trigger. Her voice trembled with rage. "You taught me to save people, not erase them." "No," Graves said quietly. "I taught you that survival has a cost." She fired once. The bullet grazed his arm, sent him stumbling back behind cover. His men shifted, weapons trained, but Angela had already moved. She wasn't trying to kill him, not yet. She wanted answers. Graves pressed a hand to his wound, blood seeping through his sleeve. "You could have killed me." "I still might." He smiled faintly. "You won't. You never could pull the trigger when it mattered." Her reply was steady. "That's what makes me human." The lights flickered again, backup generators struggling to life. And for the briefest instant, Angela saw herself reflected in a shattered mirror on the floor. Blood on her cheek, determination in her eyes, a soldier turned mother turned ghost. Was she still fighting for justice, or just trying to make the pain mean something? Doc's voice cut through her thoughts. "Angela, we're clear, let's go." She hesitated just long enough to make eye contact with Graves again. His expression wasn't anger, it was almost pity. "You can run," he said softly, "but you can't hide from what you are." Her response came like a knife. "I'm not hiding anymore." She turned, sprinted for the back hallway as bullets shattered the glass above her. Kim covered her with suppressive fire, shouting commands to her team. They burst through the kitchen, the smell of oil and blood mingling in the air, and slammed through the back door into the cold night. The alley was drenched in fog and siren light. Angela stumbled to a stop, chest heaving, heart pounding. Kim grabbed her arm. "Where do we go now?" Angela looked toward the dark skyline. "Somewhere they can't follow." "Where that?" Angela's eyes narrowed. "The truth." Behind them, the helicopter rose into the night, disappearing into the clouds. The hunters weren't gone, just circling, waiting. Angela knew this wasn't over. It had just changed shape. Kim finally spoke, breathless. "You can't keep running, Angela." "I'm not running," she said quietly. "I'm remembering." And as they vanished into the fog, 2 women from different worlds, now bound by the same ghost, the sound of distant blades echoed like a heartbeat fading into the night. How long can someone run from their own name? The question pressed itself into Angela's thoughts as she sat in the dim glow of an abandoned gas station. her hands shaking while she reloaded a borrowed pistol. The sound of sirens had faded. The night air was still thick with dust and fear, but it was quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels like the pause between storms. Agent Kim stood at the window, her silhouette etched against the neon flicker of a broken sign. She hadn't said a word in 10 minutes. Neither had Angela. There were no words big enough for what they'd just left behind. "Federal teams will be sweeping that area for hours," Kim finally said. "We can't go back." Angela didn't look up. "I wasn't planning to." Kim turned toward her. "Then start talking. Who are these people? What do they want?" Angela's hands stilled. She stared at the bullet in her fingers, a small, perfect thing designed to end something larger. "Cerberus," she said quietly. "They're not a unit, they're a business." Kim frowned. "Private military contractors." Angela nodded. "Only worse. They sell silence. They don't fight wars, they erase them." Kim's eyes darkened. "And Graves leads them." "Led them," Angela said, "until he went underground." She set the pistol down, leaned back against the wall, and exhaled slowly. Cerberus started as a covert extraction group. Off-the-books rescues, black site logistics, deniable operations. But somewhere along the way, they realized there was more money in deleting people than saving them. Kim crossed her arms, "So they turned on their own." Angela's eyes flickered. "They turned on anyone who knew too much." The wind whistled through the broken door, carrying the faint hum of passing trucks. For a moment, it almost sounded like the rotor wash of a helicopter, a sound that had once meant safety, now nothing but ghosts. Kim took a cautious step closer. "Angela, what did you know?" Angela met her gaze, tired but unflinching. Enough to bury a dozen careers, and maybe enough to expose what really happened the night we lost that family. Kim waited, but Angela said nothing more. Her silence said enough. Doc Peterson's voice still echoed in her mind. "You stood your ground. You saved lives." But tonight it didn't feel like saving. It felt like surviving, again. "Your record's been erased," Kim said carefully. "That means they had access to military archives, medical data, personnel files, high-level clearance." Angela nodded. "And they used it to make sure I stopped existing. New identity, new job, different city. But the nightmares didn't care what name I used." Kim hesitated before asking the question that had been burning in her mind since the raid. "Your son," she said softly. "Tommy, he saw something. You said that's why they took him. What did he see?" Angela's hands clenched around the edge of the counter. "Footage. He found an encrypted drive in my old laptop, something I'd hidden years ago and forgotten about. Video from my last mission." Kim's eyes narrowed. "You mean the one that got classified?" Angela nodded. "It wasn't just an ambush, Kim, it was planned." The words hit like a gunshot in the quiet room. Kim blinked. "Planned by who?" Angela's voice dropped to a whisper. "By Graves, by Cerberus. The ambush wasn't the failure, it was the objective." Kim took a step back, processing. "You're saying they orchestrated the deaths of your team?" Angela nodded again. "We were bait. The target, that so-called informant, wasn't a civilian. He was one of them, a double agent with files that could expose the company's off-ledger operations. They wanted him silenced, and they used my team to make it look like a mission gone wrong." Kim's jaw tightened. "And you were the only survivor." Angela's eyes glistened in the dim light. "Which made me a liability." The truth settled between them, heavy, terrible, undeniable. Kim sank onto a stool, the reality sinking in like cold water. "So Graves erased you to protect the company, and now he's cleaning up what's left." Angela nodded slowly. "And Tommy, he opened a door I'd kept locked for too long." "Does he know what's on that drive?" "He saw enough," Angela said, her voice trembling. "Enough to make him a target, enough to make me a mother with blood on her hands." The silence stretched again. Outside, a distant freight train howled. Inside, Angela's reflection stared back at her from the cracked window, eyes tired, face lined by guilt and memory. "You ever wonder," she said quietly, "if the people who erase us still dream about the ones they've erased?" Kim glanced at her. "You think Graves dreams?" "No," Angela said. "Men like him don't dream, they edit." Kim studied her for a moment. "And what about you?" Angela's lips curved into something almost like a smile. "I don't edit, I remember." It was a small sentence, but it carried weight, because remembering was her rebellion. It was all she had left. Kim rubbed her temples. "We need to find that drive. It's the only leverage you've got." Angela nodded. "Tommy's holding it. He doesn't even know what he's carrying." "Then we need to get to him before Graves does." Angela looked up sharply. "He's in a safe house, isn't he?" Kim hesitated, a hesitation Angela didn't miss. "Not anymore." Angela's pulse spiked. "What?" Kim met her eyes. "When Cerberus hit the club, I lost contact with the protection team. They were supposed to relocate him tonight. I haven't heard from them since." The words hit Angela like ice water. "You mean you do know where my son is?" Kim's voice stayed calm, but her eyes flickered with guilt. "We'll find him. I've got contacts, field agents." Angela slammed her palm on the table. "You don't understand. They don't take prisoners." Her voice cracked, raw and trembling. "If they have Tommy." Kim stepped forward, her tone firm but gentle. "Then we'll get him back." Angela froze. The words were too confident, too steady. She wanted to believe them, but she'd seen too many promises fade on battlefields. Kim's radio crackled faintly, a weak signal pushing through static. "This is Delta 3, a voice whispered. "Package secure, moving north on Highway 47. Angela's heart skipped. "That's them." Kim grabbed the radio. "This is Kim, confirm visual." No response, just a burst of static, then silence again. Angela's instincts prickled. "That wasn't your team." Kim frowned. "What?" "That voice," Angela said. "It wasn't one of yours." Kim's hand hovered over the radio. "How can you tell?" Angela's eyes were distant, remembering. "Because real agents don't call a child a package." The realization landed like a thunderclap. They both moved at once. Kim grabbed her jacket. "We have to go." Angela was already at the door, pistol in hand, adrenaline cutting through exhaustion. They've got him. The drive, the truth, her son, everything she'd fought to protect gone again, swallowed by the same machine that had erased her. As they climbed into Kim's unmarked SUV, Angela's mind was already racing through contingencies. "They'll move him quietly," she said. "No convoys, no signals, back roads only." Kim started the engine. "Then we follow the silence." They tore down the highway, headlights cutting through the fog. The world outside blurred trees, signs, memories. Angela sat forward, scanning the horizon, every muscle taut. She wasn't the calm medic anymore. She was the soldier again, the mother with a mission. After a long stretch of silence, Kim spoke softly. "You're not doing this alone anymore." Angela's gaze stayed on the road. "You don't have to come." Kim shook her head. "I don't walk away from people who saved my life." Angela almost smiled, almost, but her eyes stayed hard. "Then you'll understand what's coming." Kim's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What's coming?" Angela turned her head just enough for Kim to see the tears she wasn't hiding anymore. "War." They drove in silence after that, the kind that hummed with everything left unsaid. The night around them grew darker, quieter, like even the earth was holding its breath. Angela stared out the window at the endless highway, the reflection of her face mingling with the flashing lights of passing cars. She wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that biker bar. She wasn't the erased soldier or the frightened mother anymore. She was something in between, something raw, dangerous, and awake. And as the road curved north and the moonlight caught the edge of her weary face, one thought anchored her against the fear. against the exhaustion, against the years of silence that had almost broken her. This time, no one erases me. How far can a mother go before she stops being one? That thought echoed in Angela's mind as headlights carved through the darkness, the SUV roaring down a cracked highway that seemed to stretch into forever. The wind howled outside, the radio hissed with static, and somewhere ahead, maybe a mile, maybe 10, her son was being taken by men who'd once called her comrade. Agent Kim drove, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the empty road. The tension in the car was almost alive, humming like electricity, pulsing between silence and dread. Angela sat in the passenger seat, reassembling her sidearm by touch. Every click, every metallic snap was a memory replaying itself. The war zones, the smell of diesel and blood, the ghosts she'd tried to bury. Kim glanced at her. How do you know they're headed north? Angela's voice was calm, almost detached. Cerberus always moves against the wind. It messes with thermal detection. Kim gave a tight nod. We'll intercept at the old freight bridge, only route that cuts through to the mountains. Angela looked out the window, watching the distant glimmer of headlights. Then that's where this ends. Kim hesitated. You're not thinking of. Angela cut her off. If they have my son, I'm getting him back. The conviction in her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was cold, steady, absolute, the kind that no argument could touch. Kim sighed quietly. You remind me of someone I used to know. Angela's gaze softened. Another agent. Kim nodded. My sister. She was Army intel. Always believed she could fix the world if she just fought hard enough. Angela looked at her. What happened to her? Kim's hands tightened on the wheel. The world fought back. The words lingered like the taste of smoke. Neither spoke again for a while. Miles later, the GPS signal cut out, just static and a frozen arrow pointing north. The landscape grew desolate. Skeletal trees, abandoned motels, a sky bruised with storm clouds. The kind of place where no one would hear what was about to happen. Angela checked her magazine again, the motion automatic, controlled. If they've got Tommy in a lead vehicle, they'll try to transfer him off-road. We can't let them. Kim nodded. Then we take the bridge. She slowed as the faint outline of an old railway bridge emerged from the fog, long, narrow, half-collapsed. Beneath it, a river hissed with wind. Angela scanned the terrain. 2 choke points, 1 entrance, 1 exit. They'll have a rear escort. As if on cue, a low hum reached their ears. Engines. 3, maybe 4 vehicles, coming fast. Kim killed the lights. The SUV dipped into shadow. Both women crouched low, watching from the cover of trees. Headlights emerged through the mist. 2 black SUVs followed by a van. Windows tinted, license plates scrubbed. Cerberus convoy. Angela whispered, they're moving him now. Kim's hand hovered near her radio. We can call for backup. They'll jam it before you finish the call, Angela said. We do this quiet. Kim hesitated. You mean we do this alone? Angela's eyes never left the convoy. We started alone. The lead SUV rolled onto the bridge. The structure groaned under its weight. Angela's heartbeat synced with every creak. Every inch forward was a countdown. She moved first, fast, low, silent. She slipped between shadows, crossed the side embankment, and positioned herself near the bridge's undercarriage. The cold steel pressed against her palms. Kim followed, quieter than expected for someone who didn't come from the shadows. Above them, the convoy slowed. Graves' voice carried faintly through the open window of the lead vehicle. 5 minutes, transfer the package. Angela froze. She could see him now, dimly lit by the dash light. His hair slicked back, face calm as ever, as if this were just another night at work. He looked untouched by the chaos he'd created. And that was what made her hate him most. Kim's whisper crackled through the comms. 2 guards on the van, 1 driver, One passenger, no visuals inside. Angela's pulse quickened. That's Tommy's van. What's the plan? Kim asked. Angela's voice dropped to a whisper. Same as always. Adapt, survive, protect the objective. Kim exhaled. You've done this before. Angela's eyes darkened. Too many times. They moved as one. Kim circled wide toward the rear vehicle. Angela scaled the bridge's support beam, her body remembering every climb from a lifetime ago. Her shoulder screamed from old wounds, but she didn't stop. Couldn't. At the top, she crouched low, unseen. The night pressed in close. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. The sound masked her breathing. She watched Graves step out of the lead SUV, his boots striking the steel like a judge's gavel. He signaled one of his men, who opened the van's door. And there, in a flash of lightning, Angela saw him. Tommy, bound, terrified but alive. Her breath caught. Every nerve in her body screamed to move, to run, to kill. But she held still. Timing was everything. Move him, Graves ordered. Helicopter inbound. Kim's voice whispered in her ear. Angela, now or never. Angela's body moved before her mind caught up. She dropped from the beam like a ghost, landing hard on the roof of the van. Metal groaned. A shout went up. Gunfire erupted instantly. Kim flanked left, firing 2 controlled bursts that sent Cerberus guards diving for cover. Angela smashed her elbow through the van's window, reached in, and grabbed her son's arm. Tommy. His terrified eyes widened. Mom. Hold on, she shouted. A guard lunged toward the van's side, but Angela swung the door wide, slamming it into his jaw. He dropped instantly. Another guard fired. She ducked, returned fire, clipped his shoulder. The rain turned the bridge slick, the air filled with the smell of gunpowder and fear. Graves shouted something, his voice muffled through the storm, and the helicopter's searchlight flared to life above, bathing everything in blinding white. Angela grabbed her son, yanked him free, and shoved him toward Kim's direction. Go. Kim reached him halfway across the bridge, pulling him behind a pillar as bullets sparked off the steel around them. Graves emerged from the haze, gun in hand. You never learn, Martinez. Angela turned toward him, weapon raised, rain streaming down her face. I learned from you. Their eyes locked. Years of betrayal, guilt, and memory collided in that stare, soldier to soldier, ghost to ghost. Let him go, she said. Graves shook his head slowly. You know I can't. Angela's voice was a whisper, heavy with pain. Then you don't leave this bridge. Graves lifted his gun, but Angela was faster. Her first shot hit his shoulder. The second shattered his weapon. He stumbled back, eyes wide, not from pain but disbelief. He'd trained her too well. Still think I can't pull the trigger? She asked softly. Rain poured harder now, thunder cracking above them. Graves laughed weakly, clutching his wound. You always had better aim than sense. Angela advanced, gun steady. You lied to me, you killed them. I saved you, he shouted, voice breaking. You were supposed to die that night too. I made sure you didn't. Her grip tightened. Why? Because you were the best, he said. Because I thought I could make you forget. Angela's eyes glistened. You erased me to protect yourself. He didn't deny it. He just stared at her with a strange sadness. You think this ends with me? There's no stopping it. Cerberus isn't a man, Angela. It's a machine. Cut off one head. I know, she said. That's why I'm burning the whole thing down. And before Graves could respond, she fired not to kill but to end it. The bullet shattered the console behind him, igniting a small explosion from the leaking fuel line. Fire licked across the steel, spreading fast. Angela turned, grabbing Kim's arm. Move. They ran, her, Kim, and Tommy, sprinting across the bridge as flames chased them. The helicopter above wavered, struggling against the rising heat. They leaped clear of the bridge as the explosion ripped through the air. a thunderous wave that swallowed the night in orange and black. The world tilted, sound vanished, then silence. Angela hit the dirt hard, the air knocked from her lungs. For a second, everything was white noise and pain. Then a small, trembling voice. "Mom!" She opened her eyes. Tommy knelt beside her, tears mixing with rain. She reached up, touching his face, disbelief flooding her chest. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're okay." Kim crouched nearby, blood on her sleeve, breathing hard. "We need to move. There'll be more." Angela nodded weakly. "There's always more." She sat up, staring at the burning wreck of the bridge. Flames danced against the storm, swallowing the evidence, the lies, the ghosts. Tommy clung to her, crying into her shoulder. She held him tighter than she ever had before. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was fire and rain, two forces that shouldn't coexist, but somehow did. Angela looked at Kim. "He's safe, that's all that matters." Kim's expression was grim. For now, Graves was right, Cerberus won't stop. Angela's eyes hardened. "Then neither will I." She looked out over the flames, her reflection flickering in the firelight. For the first time, she wasn't just running from her past. She was facing it. Kim followed her gaze. "You know what comes next?" Angela nodded slowly. "Yeah, the part where I stop surviving and start fighting back." And as the fire burned brighter, her face glowed in its light, scarred, weary but unbroken. The kind of face that doesn't belong to legends or heroes. The kind that belongs to survivors. How do you rebuild a life that was never supposed to exist? That question stayed with Angela long after the fire died. Hours had passed since the bridge exploded, since the night tore itself apart. Now only ashes and smoke remained, curling against a pale dawn sky. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of burnt steel and gasoline. Angela sat on the tailgate of an abandoned truck, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Tommy slept nearby, curled against her arm. Agent Kim stood a few yards away, speaking into a satellite phone, her voice low, steady, professional. The world was waking up again, but for Angela, it felt like it was ending. She stared at the horizon, eyes red from smoke and tears she hadn't admitted yet. The bridge in the distance was just a black skeleton now, twisted, broken, silent. It felt like a symbol, maybe it always had been. Kim approached quietly. "Local units will secure the area within the hour. We've got a temporary safe site 10 miles west." Angela nodded absently. "And Graves?" Kim hesitated. "No sign, the body hasn't been recovered." Angela didn't react, she just stared ahead. "He's alive." Kim studied her. "You sound certain." "I know how he moves," Angela said. "He wouldn't die in someone else's plan." For a long time, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft rhythm of Tommy's breathing. Angela brushed a strand of hair from his face, her voice barely a whisper. "He's just a kid. He didn't deserve any of this." Kim's tone softened. "Neither did you." Angela gave a faint, weary smile. "Maybe not, but I walked into it. He didn't." She looked up at Kim. "You said you have contacts, people who can make him disappear." Kim nodded. "Witness relocation, clean records, new identity, new start. We can protect him." Angela's eyes glistened. "And me?" Kim hesitated. You're different." Angela's expression didn't change. "Because I don't exist." Kim sat beside her, voice gentle but firm. "Because you can't. Cerberus built its empire on ghosts. If you stay visible, they'll come again." Angela exhaled, a tremor in her breath. "Then maybe it's time I stop hiding and start haunting." Kim smiled faintly. "That sounds like something out of your old field reports." Angela glanced sideways. "You read those?" Kim shrugged. "The ones they didn't erase." For a moment, the two women shared something quiet, mutual respect born from chaos. Not trust, exactly, but something close. Angela broke the silence first. "What happens now?" Kim's tone shifted softer, almost protective. Now you let us handle it. Angela shook her head. No, Graves was right. Cerberus isn't a man, it's a machine. And you don't fight machines by waiting for orders. Then how do you fight them? Angela looked down at her sleeping son. By remembering what they try to make you forget. Kim studied her, seeing something she hadn't before. Not the medic, not the soldier, but the quiet resolve of a woman who had already accepted what she had to lose. Angela, she said carefully, you can't take them on alone. Angela gave a faint, tired smile. I've been alone for years. Kim started to protest, then stopped. There was no changing her mind, not anymore. Instead, she asked, what will you tell him? Angela looked at Tommy, at the boy who'd seen too much, lost too much, and still somehow slept peacefully against her side. The truth, she said softly, that his mother made mistakes, that she fought for the right reasons even when the world punished her for it. Kim's voice was gentle, and when he asks what you were before all this. Angela smiled faintly, eyes glistening. I'll tell him I was a medic, that I saved lives when I could, and when I couldn't, I tried anyway. A silence settled between them, the kind that carried peace instead of fear. Then Kim said quietly, you know, the Bureau could use someone like you. Angela looked at her. You mean as an agent? Kim shook her head. As a ghost, someone who moves quietly, finds what others can't, fixes what the rest of us break. Angela laughed softly. I thought you said I couldn't exist. Kim smiled. That's what makes you perfect. The wind picked up, carrying the faint hum of distant sirens. Reinforcements were coming. The world would soon crowd this place again, fill it with tape, reports, headlines. And when they did, Angela Martinez would have to vanish again. She looked at Kim, voice steady now. You'll keep him safe. With my life, Kim said. Angela nodded, as if that promise was enough. Maybe it had to be. She bent down, brushing her lips against Tommy's forehead. He stirred, murmuring softly. Mom. SHH, she whispered. Go back to sleep. Everything's okay now. He drifted off again, his small hand clutching hers even as he dreamed. She didn't pull away. Kim turned to walk toward the SUV, giving her space, but Angela's voice stopped her. Sarah, she said quietly. It was the first time she'd used her name. When this is over, tell the world what happened. Kim turned back, and if they don't believe me. Angela looked down at her son, then back at the burning sky. Make them. Kim nodded once, I will. Angela stood slowly, every muscle aching, every scar reminding her she was still alive. She looked down at Tommy one last time, memorizing the softness in his face, the piece of her that hadn't been tainted by war. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a flash drive, the one Tommy had found, the one Cerberus wanted. She pressed it into Kim's hand. This is everything, contracts, mission logs, names, enough to sink them. Kim stared at it. You're giving this up. Angela's expression softened. I don't need proof anymore. I just need peace. Kim looked at her for a long moment, then whispered, You'll disappear after this, won't you? Angela's faint smile was all the answer she needed. The first rays of morning light cut through the clouds, spilling over the wreckage. Smoke curled skyward like the ghosts of everything they'd lost. Angela walked toward the horizon, slow, deliberate, unhurried. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if she was finally leaving the weight of the past behind. No ceremony, no farewell, just distance. Kim watched her go until she was a silhouette against the dawn, a figure too stubborn to die, too quiet to be remembered, too human to ever be forgotten. Tommy stirred again, eyes fluttering open. Where, Mom? Kim knelt beside him, voice breaking but calm. She had to go. Will she come back? Kim hesitated, then smiled softly. When the world's safe enough for her too. He nodded, trusting her, because children believe in things adults can't anymore. He looked toward the sunrise and whispered, "She'll find us." Kim swallowed hard, forcing the words past the lump in her throat. "Yeah, she will." The boy's gaze lingered on the horizon, where the light was breaking through clouds, soft, golden, alive. He smiled faintly, as if he could already see her there. And maybe, in some way, he could. 1 year later. The desert wind swept across the outskirts of Kabul, carrying dust and heat and memory. A convoy of relief trucks wound through the ruins of a village once scarred by war. At the lead truck, a figure stepped out, helmet low, sleeves rolled up, face obscured by sun and dust. She moved with quiet purpose, helping a child from the wreckage of a collapsed clinic. A medic patch glinted faintly on her shoulder. Someone called out from the supply line, "You new here?" She looked up, her voice calm, steady, practiced. "Just passing through." The worker nodded, smiling faintly. "You've got the hands of a soldier." She smiled, soft, knowing. "Not anymore." He offered his hand. "Name's Malik, you." She hesitated, then said the first thing that came to mind. Angel. It wasn't her real name, but maybe it didn't have to be. Because names were for the living, and she'd become something else entirely. She looked out across the dunes, the sky bleeding gold over the horizon. Somewhere far away, she knew Kim had kept her promise, that Tommy was safe, that Cerberus was burning from the inside out. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the heat on her face. The ache in her chest eased, not gone, but gentler. Sometimes peace doesn't arrive with silence, it arrives with purpose. And as she climbed back into the truck, her reflection caught in the mirror, sun-worn, scarred, alive. She whispered to herself words she hadn't spoken in years. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The convoy rolled forward into the rising light. Dust swallowed the road behind them. The desert wind carried her name away. And in that nameless space between war and peace, between grief and grace, Angela Martinez finally disappeared the right way. Not erased, not forgotten, just free.